Myths are important to us all, important to all human societies, for they all rest on these significant stories that provide meaning. But myths in particular, the great myths, provide a depth of understanding that isn't always realised. And it's that question that we'll be exploring in the first Fintry Trust Annual Lecture, which is going to be held on March 7th this year at Fintry in Surrey. The title of the lecture is Sacred Stories, Living Truths, Exploring the Evolution of Human Awareness. And we'll be looking at the way in which the soul and awareness and self-consciousness descend. That's really what is covered in the Iliad. And the ascent of the mind back to the soul, back to the spiritual soul, which is covered in the Odyssey. And it is quite clear when you look at particularly the Iliad this way, that it was marking a point in human history when an epoch-making change occurred between one form of awareness and another, the imaginative, clairvoyant awareness of the Trojans and the more rational, egoic consciousness that the Greeks were bringing into being, and under whose lights and within whose limitations and possibilities we live up to this day. But we can understand what we lost back then and what we gained and what we need to rediscover again by looking at the Iliad and the Odyssey. When we turn to the wonderful story of the Ramayana, which we'll be looking at briefly in this lecture, but it is an extraordinarily fine story as a story. And then that heart of the Mahabharata, when Krishna talks to and instructs Arjuna as he stands between two warring elements in his own family. These two stories, again, mark the shift between one epoch and another. The epoch that Rama is involved in, Rama and his army of monkeys taking on the great demon Ravana, is a time when the way of looking at consciousness, we call it the wheel or circle of consciousness, and it's a way of understanding the different ways in which we make sense of the world in which we're in. And it rests on the colour chart developed by Goethe and by René Guénon, and that will be introduced at this first annual lecture, March the 7th at Fintry. I hope you'll join us there.